Hey beautiful people, on today's episode, you're gonna learn how to sew this gorgeous dress just in time for spring and summer. If you don't like sewing zippers, then you're really going to love the part of this tutorial where I show you how to use elastic thread to create this shirt effect at the back of the dress. To sew this, you need the following items. The first thing we're gonna do is measure and cut this dress. Measure below your bust where the seam of the dress will sit, add 1 inch and multiply by 2. This is how wide you will cut the rectangle for tier 1 of the dress, and the length should be 10 to 12 inches depending on how long you want your dress to be. I made mine 11 inches long. Cut another rectangle for tier 2 that is 2 times the width of tier 1 with a length of 16 to 18 inches. Make the lengths shorter if you want a shorter dress. I made mine 18 inches long. You may have to cut several pieces for the second tier and join them together to get the total width you desire. Retrace a flat bodice pattern onto fresh pattern paper. This is how you turn it into a 2-dot pattern. If you're starting from a 2-dot pattern, that's even better and you can skip this step. Place your ruler at a right angle with the center front of the bodice and draw a line from the bust point to the side seam. Cut through this line, but not all the way. It should just be hinging. Draw a right angle line on fresh pattern paper and place the center front of the pattern on the vertical line. Hinge the loose piece of the pattern down so that the bottom of it sits on top of the horizontal line. Measure down from the bust point 0.75 inches and redraw the dart legs. Measure to the side seam from the bust point 1.25 inches and redraw the dart legs. Retrace the rest of the pattern and voila, a 2-dart bodice pattern. Retrace this onto fresh pattern paper. Again, find the midpoint of the shoulder and draw a line from there in line with one of the waist dart legs. Draw a line coming from the side dart to meet the new line. Measure and mark 2 inches above and below the extended line on the new line. Transfer that mark over to the other dart leg. Cut along the shoulder line and the top side dart line. Fold the lower part of the pattern to sit on the top part until the side seam is even. Use your French curve to smooth away the points. We will call this piece C as in cat and the other piece B. Draw the tube top shape on your patterns and cut them out like this. You can trace it over to fresh pattern paper and add allowance around the sides no more than 1/2 inch. Don't add seam allowance to the center front as it will be placed on the fold. I didn't retrace mine, so I'm adding seam allowance here as I cut. Cut 2 pieces for piece B and 4 pieces for piece C with the fabric right sides together each time. I'm currently working on a PDF pattern for this dress and I am looking for 3 testers. Send an email to hi@SewQuaint if you're interested. You must be able to print and use the pattern right away and provide photos of your finished dress within a week's time. Cut a rectangle 23 inches wide and 8 inches long for the back of the dress. Cut 2 strips of fabric 1.5 inches wide and 20 inches long for the shoulder straps. Now we're gonna sew this dress. Set your stitch length to the longest amount and your stitch tension to 2 or 3. Run 2 parallel stitches along the top of tier 1 on the right side of the fabric, leaving a long tail of thread on both ends. Hold on to the bobbin threads and slide your fabric along in order to create gathers. Gather until the width of tier 1 is 2 inches more than your hip circumference. Do the same thing for tier 2, but gather until it's the same width as tier 1 before it was gathered. Put the top of tier 2 right sides together with the bottom of tier 1 and sew them. Take the pieces for the top of the dress and sew the sides to the centerpiece right sides together following the curve. You will end up with 2 full pieces for the front of your dress. One piece will be the outer layer and the other piece will be the inner layer. Fold the strips of fabric right sides together and sew 1/4 inch or more away from the edge. Use a safety pin or loop turner to turn the straps inside out and press them flat. Put the inner and outer layer of the front of the top right sides together and align the straps with the princess seams. Sew along the top of the garment and stitch a few extra times where the straps are. Understitch the seam allowance to the inner layer of the bodice. Fold and stitch the top edge of the back of the bodice by 1/2 inch. Measure to make sure it matches the front of the bodice. Cut away the excess fabric if it doesn't. Draw several lines on the right side of the fabric with a 1/2 inch space in between each of them. Manually wind a bobbin with elastic thread. Don't make it too tight or too loose. Using this in your machine, sew along the lines that you drew. When moving to another line, pivot your fabric, stitch 1/2 inch, and pivot again to stitch on the next line. Leave a 0.75 inch space below the last line. Measure and cut a piece of 1/4 inch elastic that is half the width of the back of your top. Use a safety pin to guide it through the top of the garment. This adds more definition to it. Put the front and back pieces right sides together and create a sandwich, bringing the inner layer over to the other side. Make sure that the top of the front and back are in line with each other. Sew along the sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Sew the sides of the skirt right sides together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance as well. Mark the center front and sides of the skirt and do the same for the top. Match the center front, the sides, and the center back of the top with the same points on the skirt right sides together and sew all the way around. Cut a piece of 1/2 inch elastic that is 4 inches shorter than your below bust circumference and sew the ends together. Sew the elastic into the seam allowance of the dress to make it more fitted. At this point, fit your dress to find where you want your straps to go. You can do a crisscross detail here if you'd like, but I just did mine going straight back. I pinned them into place and I stitched them a few times in order to secure them. Fold the hem of the dress up by 1 inch twice, stitch it down, and press it flat. Comment, I can't wait to make this dress if you made it this far. If you like this, you might like my dressmaking playlist.